Hi Mustangs, I'm here today to guide you along with our reading lesson for today. We're going to be reading two really fun books and we're going to have some fun activities that go along with it. So let's go ahead and get started today.
The objectives for today's lesson are I can monitor comprehension and make adjustments such as rereading, using background knowledge, checking for visual cues, and asking questions. Another objective for today's lesson is that I can make personal text-to-text and text-to-world connections to a fiction and nonfiction book, as well as I can create a sea creature using the information from the books, and I can create a story for my sea creature. Now let's talk about why we're going to learn about this. The rationale for our lesson today is to be able to learn how to actively monitor your reading as you're reading a book. There's going to be some questions during our lesson today that will help you build your prior knowledge for down the road as you get older, so that you're able to check in with yourself and make sure you understand what you're reading while you're reading it. We're also going to be doing some activities that include order of events, factor opinions, and creating our own story independently, which will help us with our knowledge with fiction and nonfiction books.
Alrighty, so the first book we're going to read today is called Where the Wild Things Are, and it's written by Maurice Sendak. I think you're going to love this book. It's a lot of fun. This is our fiction book for today, and some of our personal goals just for this book today is I can make predictions before I read, I can retell a story in order, and I can make a connection to a story using personal experiences. Today, instead of a read aloud, I am going to give the independence to you, and you are going to read these stories on your own. And so the fun thing about that is that you can read to your stuffed animals, you can read to your parents, you can read to your older or younger brothers and sisters, or you can read to anybody or anything that you want, or you can read completely by yourself. That's the fun of it. So you're going to read the first book, but before you read the first book, I have a couple questions for you to keep in mind and to answer for yourself. So the first one, it says, what do you think the book will be about? Okay. What do you think a wild thing is? Be thinking in your mind. And where do you think this book takes place? Okay, so here are those questions that I was talking about that you need to be asking yourself and answering before you begin reading Where the Wild Things Are. Now I'm going to share with you the questions that you should be asking yourself during your reading. So those questions are, why did Max's mother send him to his room, and was this a fair punishment? Also, how did Max get to the land of the wild things? And our last question for during our reading is, why was Max made king of the wild things? Now go ahead and pause this video here on our during reading questions, and go ahead and find the link in our Google Classroom under reading lesson, and it'll take you to a Scholastic website where it has both of the books that you will need to read for today's lesson. Go ahead and read Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, and then come right back here for our after reading questions. Alrighty, welcome back. I hope y'all enjoyed that book. I think it's so much fun. Now I'm going to ask you some after reading questions. So, why did Max send the wild things to bed without any supper? What was waiting for Max when he returned home? And why was Max's supper still warm when he returned? Did he really go anywhere? Go ahead and pause this video until you have these questions answered. Okay, next we are going to do this activity together. So go ahead and pull open our Google Classroom and go under our reading lesson for today, and you're going to find this order of events chart that you will need to type in, and we're going to do this together. Okay, so because you are looking at yours on your computer or your tablet screen, it's going to look a little bit different, and you're going to have to type in your answers. I personally printed mine out on a little piece of paper just so I could show you easier on this video. So let's read it together. So up at the top, it says right here our directions. And our directions are to read each of the events from Where the Wild Things Are, write a number 1 in the box that happened first, and number each event in order from 1 to 5. So each of these boxes include a different event that happened throughout the book, and we are going to put them in order from the things that happened first to the things that happened last. So let's read the boxes just to see which events we're working with. So the first one is Max arrives at the land of the wild things, and then Max organizes the wild rumpus and sends the wild things to bed. Max stands up to the wild things and is made king. Max returns home to a warm supper, and Max is playing. He is sent to his room with no supper. So, out of those, I remember which one came first, but I'm going to give you a chance to fill it in first. Which one was the first thing that happened? Go ahead and fill it in your Google Classroom. I'm going to fill mine in. Okay. The first thing that happened in Where the Wild Things Are was that Max is playing and he is sent to his room with no supper. So it's this one down here. This one is our number 1. Okay, and then our number 2. Go ahead and fill in our number 2. Let's see, okay. Number 2 is right here. It's that Max arrives at the land of the wild things. Oops. All right, go ahead and fill in number 3. Which one happened next? All right. I got this one for number 3, that Max stands up to the wild things and is made king. Okay, which one happened next? Okay, I got this one, that Max organizes the wild rumpus and sends the wild things to bed. Okay, so that only leaves one more box. Let's make sure it's right. That Max returns home to a warm supper. I believe that is correct. So that would mean that our storyline and our order of events would be, first, Max is playing and he is sent to his room with no supper. Then Max arrives at the land of the wild things. Then Max stands up to the wild things and is made king. Then Max organizes the wild rumpus and sends the wild things to bed. And then Max returns home to a warm supper. Go ahead and submit your answers, and this is our informal assessment for Where the Wild Things Are today. Now that we're done with our activity for Where the Wild Things Are, we're going to go ahead and move to our second book, which is Where Land Meets Sea by Alan Fuller. And our student goals for this lesson are that I can classify statements as fact or opinion, and I can identify nonfiction text features. Okay, so just like Where the Wild Things Are, we have some questions to ask before our reading of Where Land Meets Sea. So those questions are, look at the cover and what do you notice? What do you think we will be reading about in this book? Make a prediction. So go ahead and write out your prediction. What do you think this book is going to be about? And do you think the story will be fiction or nonfiction, and why? And remember, we've learned about what nonfiction books are about and what fiction books are about, so I want to see what you think. All right, so here are those questions written out for you. Go ahead and pause the video and write out your answers to each question, and come back whenever you are ready to begin reading. Okay, now that you are ready to begin reading the book, go ahead and go to the same Scholastic link that was in our Google Classroom to find Where Land Meets Sea by Alan Fuller. And I'm going to ask you these questions that you need to be thinking about during your reading. So the first one is, where are two types of nonfiction text features the author used and the illustrations in the book are photographs. Do they help you make text-to-self connections about a trip you have had? Go ahead and pause our video lesson right here and come back once you're done reading the book. All right, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that book. I always find it super interesting to read. So now we're going to use our after reading questions. The first one is, what are 3 facts you learned in the book? So go ahead and write those 3 facts down on a piece of paper. And what other nonfiction text features do you think the author could have used in the book?